It was, I think, around June of 2011. I was looking up some triviality or other on Know Your Meme. On that particular occasion, the front page had a large graphic of what appeared to be a very pink girl's toy line, with the caption, "My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic." I shook my head. Typical internet. They've got hold of some crappy girl's toy and are going, "Herpaderp, this is a crappy girl's toy, let's make fun of it." Then I thought, hang on, there's a million crappy girls' toys. Why would they suddenly take an interest in this one? I clicked the graphic. I found myself looking at a very lengthy article. Apparently, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic was a new TV show, and it was gaining popularity with people of all ages and genders. There was a fandom and everything. They were called bronies. I read through the whole thing with amusement and interest. By the end, it seemed like the show might actually be something I might like. But on the other hand, fandom scared me. I didn't like crowds, especially not internet crowds. So I decided to pass on it and went about my day. Around 7 months later, in late January of 2012, I got a message. Maybe Skype, maybe Facebook, who knows what was around then. Anyway, it said, "Dude, you have to check out this show, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It's seriously the best show on right now." Okay, I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a try. I queued up the first episode and started watching. I don't know what it was, but at that particular time I was in a mind frame of openness, of being willing to accept. Or perhaps I just decided that if I was going to watch a show called My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, then I was already past the point of judging. Anyway, I watched it with a completely open mind. The first episode had a cold open. My first impression was that it was well drawn and well animated, good production value. Then the theme song sequence started, and watching it felt like a thrill. It was like being allowed into a world I'd never been in, nor even considered before. Girls' shows were ultra lame, right? As I watched, I kept liking each moment more than the last. The characters were funny and charming and likable. The writing was good. Wow, yeah, this show is pretty good, isn't it? The episode ended. I queued up the next one. I spent the next few days watching episodes. I kept liking them, but it was still a little new and different, and I was not quite at the point of really feeling in it just yet. Then I started watching Sonic Rainboom. The moment Rainbow Dash finally performed the titular trick to save her friend, I fell head over heels in love. You think I'm being figurative. I realize this all sounds spectacularly stupid, and I suppose it is, but I'm about 80% sure I was in actual love. I dove into the fandom despite my previous reservations, and that was the beginning of a whirlwind year. I've tried many times to describe that time and how it felt, but I've always ended up just babbling incoherently and saying words like amazing and it was just like amazing and such. Pretty sure that counts as evidence towards it having been standard issue romantic love. Can anyone describe that any more coherently? Probably not. So I won't even try to explain it, other than to say it felt new and sparkly and sunny and magical. That's about as far as I can describe it clearly. Now, I've talked at length about my fear and avoidance of romantic love. So how and why did I allow myself to fall into it this time? Simple. I didn't know you could fall in love with an inanimate concept. I thought it was people only. Thus, I was blissfully unaware of what it was. Had I known, I would have walked away immediately. Fortunately, and alas, I didn't. They say that love is blind, by which apparently is meant that you don't notice your lover's flaws. I suppose that was true here too. Every day I was on Equestria Daily reading the latest news and checking out fandom art. I loaded up my playlist with brony music, which was frequently high quality, and the first exposure I had to the notion of non-famous internet folks making really good music. I read tons of comics and followed the development of games. I listened to interviews. I watched convention streams. I was in it. Aside from the fun and romance, though, there was also another important aspect having to do with the fact that it was a kids' show. Non-sexuality. Oh, I always knew there was pornographic fan material called clop, because the Know Your Meme article had mentioned it, but I simply shrugged it off. Rule 34 means there's porn of everything, so whatever. I just ignored it. To me, the show was gloriously, wonderfully asexual. It was a chance for me to take my troubled and hated sexuality and put it completely to the side. to be free of it for a few precious hours a day, to watch a show with females that I could see as women, well, ponies, rather than sources of sexual attraction with all attendant baggage. They were A. cartoons, B. scrupulously passed through child-friendliness checks, and C. literal horses. With them, I was a person and they were people. I related to them, I liked them, I felt with them, I cheered for them, I laughed with them. Friends. Friends without the human femaleness to get in the way. That may not have been a sustainable or ultimately healthy way to deal with my sexual guilt, but at the time it felt like just what I needed. And while it lasted, it was magical. It all seemed so alive, so vibrant, pulling into the future, going places, going everywhere, opening up a beautiful new world. It was a blissful year. Around February of 2013, a couple of things happened that shook this paradise to its core. First, Fighting is Magic, one of the most high-profile fan games, received a cease and desist from the previously very lenient Hasbro. Then, a convention imploded. Although the latter seems like more of a big deal, the day I read about the former, everything seemed to come crashing down. It's funny, I looked up the post announcing the C&D and it simply displayed the game's logo, but I could swear I remember it having a picture of a rainstorm, such was the vividness of how I felt. The event itself, I suppose, is comically trivial and a common thing, but to me, it represented everything being over. That night, I remember lying in bed thinking, I have to get out, now. But I didn't. I stayed in. I don't regret it, because many good things did happen after that, and I enjoyed many more fan songs and comics and so on. I even wrote some songs of my own, and went to a few conventions and performed, spottily. But I was never able to be in it the way I had been. I was always a little removed, a little guarded now. Once your heart has felt the stab of real life intruding on the honeymoon, it's not really going to be able to be fully open again. Maybe cynicism isn't so bad compared to the alternative. Anyway, after those events, there began a process of me very slowly drifting away. I stayed for many years, but by 2020 I was hanging on to it only by a thread. I did my last convention show that year, online. It was the COVID era. Then I pretty much just walked away from it. For years prior, I'd felt an oppressive emptiness. It was as if a town that had been bursting with life had become completely deserted. Not just no life, but almost anti-life, as if the emptiness was a thing unto itself, brutal and oppressive. I couldn't take the feeling, and I'd been noticing all my lover's flaws for years. Every little thing was a roller coaster. I had to leave sooner or later. Having said all that, I'll never forget that first year we had together, Friendship is Magic and I. I wouldn't take it back, but it's gone now, and nothing like it is ever likely to happen again.